Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast for Fox, PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM HD Radio, and 1480 AM. My name is Jason Fanelli. I am the Esports Insider for Fox, PHL The Gambler, welcoming you to another edition of Cheesesteaks and Controllers. Big show tonight. Have a good interview with Call of Duty League Pro. We're going to talk about The Last of Us Part 2 with no spoilers, I promise, and a couple other things that are just weighing on me right now, and I just want to get them off my chest. So before we do anything else, let's get into the 6 and 60. The Philadelphia Fusion swept the Boston Uprising 3-0 in their second Summer Showdown match for the Overwatch League. The defending champion San Francisco Shock are next. Meanwhile, in the Call of Duty League, the Florida Mutineers went 2 in a row with a Paris home series win. The league is now off until July 10th. The 76ers Gaming Club got their first win of the regular season on Tuesday, beating Pistons Gaming Club 2-0. Elsewhere, Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time was officially unveiled by Activision, being developed by Toys for Bob, who made the Insane Trilogy remasters. The first Night City Wire presentation gave us a slew of new information for Cyberpunk 2077, which will be covered later on in the speedrun. And finally, the new Pokemon Presents unveiled Pokemon Unite, a 5-on-5 multiplayer online battle arena game in the style of League of Legends and Dota 2. Is Pokemon going esports? Time will tell. Yes, that is your 6 in 60 for the week. Lots of big things happening in the world of gaming and esports. Philadelphia Fusion still doing great things in the Overwatch League, and the Florida Mutineers are just tearing people apart in the Call of Duty League. And speaking of the Florida Mutineers, I am pleased and honored to have with us right now the head coach of the team. That is Ricky Lugo, but you know him as Atura. Atura, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Jason. How are you?
Good. Very, very excited to have you on today. You guys are kicking major butt in this league right now. What do you attribute to your recent success, particularly being the team that's had the most roster moves already in the season?
Well, honestly, I feel our team has been good, honestly, the whole year. It's just been certain hiccups where we just couldn't really be the best. So we just made slight changes to honestly fix those issues, and they worked every time. When we put in Jay, it worked really well. We won right away, and then we were still a really good team with Chance, and then I don't know, we just had like a hump that we couldn't get over, and we just found Awakening, and we just plugged him in, and honestly, he literally just made our team, turned our team to a whole new level, man.
He really has. He's now 2 for 2 in home series.
2 for 2 and 8-0.
That's amazing. 2 and 2 and 8.
It's crazy.
And real quick, in the back of your head, are you worried he's going to be like, "Oh, I'm undefeated. I'm out of here, going out on top"?
Oh man, I hope not.
So, what did he bring to you? What has he brought to the table to get you over that hump that you were missing before he joined?
So here, the thing about Awakening was how the AM scene is ran this year is a lot of the AM teams play pro teams all the time. Mm-hmm. So he's already had that experience from learning from them, and his amateur team was already the best team when he was on it. And when he came to our team, he actually had a lot of things that he critiqued on us and that he helped us like overcome, and he helped us figure out a bunch of situations that we actually didn't know how to play well, and his old team played better, and we kind of just, used some of the things he told us and we implemented into our system, and it just worked out even better.
So he kind of came in and was immediately in like a mentor role as well as a player, giving strategies and stuff like that.
Give or take. He took some time. It took him like maybe a couple weeks. He didn't really talk at all much, honestly. The guys were just like, Joe, are you there? Because we were never sure if he was ever there. We're like, Joe? He's like, I'm here. It's so funny. And so then now he's just like critiquing and everything. It's just like, it's great, honestly. It's good to hear him speak and give his knowledge and tell everyone how smart and great of a player he is.
Oh, for sure. So how crucial, then, would you say was the time off between your home series, which did not go well for you? You didn't win a single map, unfortunately. I'm sorry to bring that up. And then the Minnesota home series, where you were a completely different team. Now, you also had an extra week that you weren't planning to have because of the early June delay. So that was even another week to get cohesive, to get gelled. How important was that to get him acclimated?
Well, honestly, so leading into the event, like before we knew it was postponed a week, we were actually very confident still on how good our team was. Like our team's been actually really good for a while. Like even with Mox, our team was really good. So we've always played like the best team. So we've always looked good leading into the event. Like even in that event, we were looking good with Chance. It's just unfortunate we just didn't have the best event, and a lot of things just didn't go our way. But yeah, that extra week helped a lot. So we were probably really comfortable with our respawn game at that time. About a week, I think it was a week prior. Yeah, so the week of is when we were literally just dominating in respawns with Awakening, and we were just like, okay, but we got to fix up on our S&D, and then that's kind of when the event got postponed, and we were like, okay, this actually saves us a lot of time. Like we can actually work on our S&D during this like extra week we have. And so I don't know. I think we still would have won the event, but I think the S&D still would have been, it would have been like iffy for sure.
But giving you that. So what about the S&D? Did you have to fix? What would you say was your biggest weakness?
I think it was just reps in general. We just didn't have enough reps with Joe. We were kind of just trying to fill him into what like Mox used to run, but like we weren't comfortable exactly with like what he was doing. So we kept switching things around a lot. And then we finally, we're not completely like certain on where everyone or how everyone wants to play every map, but I think people have like more of an idea on how they want to play certain maps. Like that's why we played some of the maps like Ramaz and Piccadilly the most, because those were the maps we just played the most with Joe. So those are just like our comfort picks.
That makes sense. But as you keep going now, you'll have more reps on other maps, and you might see
exactly.
That makes sense. Sure. So about that, actually, you have another lengthy break coming. You come back for the London series, which I believe is the 10th or the 12th of July. What are you going to do to keep this success going?
Honestly, just to make sure we don't get complacent, and honestly to make sure the guys stay motivated. I think this whole thing about us saying we're onliners and we're just like we're cheaters, like all those like claims, I feel like honestly that just motivates everyone and fuels their fire just to like keep working at it, keep getting better, and honestly just keep improving.
Are you getting a lot of that?
I feel like we are, honestly, like on Reddit and everything, and it's unfortunate, but obviously like things do happen, and a lot of up and comers do get a lot of hate when they first get into the scene, like Simp and Abizi and all those guys. Sure. So it's not really like that shocking to me to hear all those like claims.
Now, did those claims ramp up after the total annihilation of the Atlanta FaZe on Sunday?
Yeah, you didn't see it much until that domination map, and then everyone was like, listen, like, Florida's got onto something. Like, they're way too good. Like, they should not be doing this to the FaZe. Yeah, and everyone was mind blown.
Did you even expect something like that?
I did not expect that. I did not expect. I expected a close series. Like, the first two maps were close. Like, I knew we were a better respawn team, and honestly, I was, like, thinking maybe for a 3-1. Like, I was assuming they were going to take the search, but we clutched up in the search 5-5, and then I don't know, man. I guess we just used the momentum in that last map, that 5-5, to honestly just steamroll them in the next map.
It's one of those things where search and destroy is your weakness, admittedly. So when you do win that and you're up 2-0, the guys are like, no, we got to do this now. They've already come back. They've already reversed sweep, 2 or 3 different teams in the Paris home series so far? Atlanta did?
I think so. I think
they
it was 2.
did.
Yeah,
I think it was 2.
Paris was 2, and then the event prior it was 2 or 3.
Yeah, so they're the kings of the reverse sweep. So if you could avoid that and just dominate them in domination, that's what you did.
Yeah, that was our game plan.
And is it a bit of a motivator that even through these fantastic series, total 8-0, last 2 home series wins, that you're still second in the standings?
No, it's not really that much of a surprise. Like, obviously, when you have back-to-back or just like 2 events where you only get 10 points total, like obviously that's going to show in the standings. But I mean, we made up for it. We got 100 points in the last 2 weeks. We're in second place. We're 30 points behind Atlanta. We're really obviously aiming for the top 2 spot. But first wouldn't hurt.
First would not hurt at all. Let's talk about the playoff structure for a little bit. It's a ways away. We still have 3 more home series to go in July before we start talking playoffs. But how important is it to you to get one of those double buys?
Oh, it's probably the most important. It's without a doubt the most important thing. Like, getting a top 2 seed is literally, I think you win 3 rounds and you win the event, or 4 rounds and you win the event, which is ridiculous.
So it's a home series at that point. 4 rounds and you're in.
Yes, which is crazy.
That is insane.
And the best part about it is it's for $400K each, which is actually insane.
$400K each?
$400K each, yes.
Oh boy!
For first place.
Wow!
To play 4 rounds for that. That's a
good day at the office.
Yeah, 100%.
I had not looked up prize pools yet, so that's quite the incentive.
It's really good.
So you have 2 more home series to go before the end of the season. You have London, and then you have the big one at the end of the season where the top 5 teams again come together.
Yeah, Toronto series.
Do you have a thought in the back of your head that maybe your guys will be looking ahead to that Toronto series, and how do you prevent that?
Well, for the Toronto home series, honestly, we're just using that as like a practice reps. That's literally like what the guys are thinking is literally just that's a pre-champs. That's literally what it is. It's all the best teams in the game, and they're at the same event, and that pretty much, I feel like that event will pretty much like dictate who is the best team or who are the best teams, like overall after that, for sure, leading up to champs.
Right. Could you see a little more pressure coming if you aren't in a top 2 seed at that event? Might you take it? I mean, you said practice reps. Obviously, you're going to take them seriously.
Yeah,
but if you're in 3rd, let's say at the time, and then
we're pulling out everything.
That's good.
We're
exactly
pulling out all the strats. Like that round. That's a huge, like, from 3rd to 2nd. Like anything we got in the back pocket, we're pulling it out for any series if we need a win, for sure, depending on how the points are.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So who right now, as you look at your competition, who right now is the team that you circle on your calendar? Like, that is the team. I would say Atlanta, but then you just dragged Atlanta through the mud this weekend. So maybe there's a false sense of confidence there. I don't know. But is there a team that you're looking at this at the schedule at the lineup, and you're like, we can't take them too lightly. We have to be serious with them.
Well, yeah, we do that with honestly every team, no matter who they are. Like, even leading to the event, like, we knew Paris wasn't in the best shape and they weren't the best team, but we still did a lot of research. We watched how they played, watched their breakoffs, kind of like thought of ideas on how to counter them, and we still played it just like we would against the FaZe. We'll prep against whatever team, no matter how good or like bad their overall record is. Probably the same, just because of how competitive this franchise is. Like, every team is literally the same in skill level. Like, the margin is very, very minimal. I think it's just us, and then it's like Atlanta and Dallas, and then every other team is literally right next to those guys.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, I was thinking Chicago would really pull away, but then something happened there. They got the Twins back, and then all of a sudden, the Twins weren't playing together, which is interesting. But yeah, that would make sense. That you're in a top 2, top 3 spot. You're looking good. You're killing it. These last 2 series, really insane, and really entertaining to watch too. So this is a podcast dedicated not only to hardcore esports people, but people who might not be into the scene all that much. So what would your elevator pitch be to someone who's never heard of it before to tune into a Call of Duty League home series when they're back
on? Well, honestly, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like everyone has played COD for sure. It's just yeah. I feel like it literally originates from the 2010 household, like Modern Warfare 2. Like, everyone's played it back in the day, and honestly, with Warzone coming out, I feel like it definitely has drew back a lot of those old fans that used to watch COD because they're playing it again. They're like, oh, this is fun. And honestly, I feel like watching CDL actually shows that anyone can do it. It's a great career. Like if you can ever actually get invested into it. And honestly, it's very entertaining. Like every match goes down the wire. There's really not that many blowouts. Well, there's our there was our map, but
there's one big one I can think of. It just happens
there's one I could think of for sure. But like honestly, every map in the CDL is very close. Like the competitive is honestly at an all-time high, and honestly, there's not much else to say. Honestly, I do believe that the league is actually pretty. Like right now, I don't think it's bad at all. I think people definitely over-exaggerate how bad the league is or how bad the season has been going. And I feel the season actually has been going pretty well for the circumstances we have.
Of course it has. People are saying it's bad on the internet? No way.
Yeah, I mean, the real reason for that is literally because players from California. Unfortunately, like playing from California is really hard to do in this game when there's dedicated servers and when there's a veto system. Like you're going to be forced to play on a server you're not,
Wow.
your favorite server to play on, but it's just how it is. Like you just got to deal with it. A lot of teams have that issue. It's just obviously some teams think about it different than others and try to like not tweet about it.
Try to keep it to themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's all right. Like I understand, but come on.
Well, look, I really appreciate your time. It was a joy talking to you. I wish you the best of luck and success in the rest of the season. And if you ever want to hop back on, there's always a spot for you, my friend. This is Atura. Thank you so much for your time. You have a great week, great time off, and a great rest of the season.
Thank you so much, Jason. You do the same.
Thanks. There you have it, folks. That is Atura. He has his team flying high right now in the Call of Duty League. And you can catch all of the action when the league comes back on July 10th at youtube.com/COD League. That's youtube.com/COD League. And if you don't want to wait and you want to see what all the fuss is about, particularly that map we were talking about, the domination map against Atlanta FaZe, you can go to that YouTube channel right now. And all of the matches that have been played so far this year are available on demand, as well as a few other videos detailing players and showing some key moments from each weekend. Definitely check that out if you want to get more involved in the league. Also, you heard us talking about prize pools and how we mentioned it's $400,000 a person for the championship at the end of the year. Based on the official Call of Duty's League's website, he was not that far off. First place champion gets $2 million. Second place gets $1 million. Third gets $500,000. Fourth, $300,000. Fifth and sixth, $200,000. Seventh and eighth, $125,000. Ninth and 10th, $75,000. And 11th and 12th, a pat on the back and a handshake. So that's what's at stake when the league goes into playoffs after the last three series of the season. Definitely a lot to play for, and definitely worth getting those top two seeds like he was mentioning. But enough about that. Y'all are thirsty. It's a light offering this week, but there's definitely something for you on tap. An interesting week for the Nintendo Switch and not much else this week on tap. First off, we have Brigandine, The Legend of Runertia, a tactical role-playing game that is a sequel to the 1998 PlayStation 1 game Brigandine, The Legend of Forsaena, or just Brigandine. Also, Mr. Driller Drill Land, an old GameCube game that never made its way to the United States, has hit the Nintendo Switch this week. So if you were a fan of Mr. Driller and always wanted to play the sequel, now you can on the Switch and PC. However, there is one big piece of DLC for the Switch that will be a big deal to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate fans, and that is the next character in the Character Pass, Fighters Pass Volume 2. That is Min Min from ARMS. Her reveal trailer was this past Monday, and she will be launching this Tuesday. So sort of a light week, big for Nintendo Switch, but still, there's enough there to fill your cup. So what's on tap for you? So now that you know what's coming next week, I would like to take a step back and talk about something that came out last week. And that is The Last of Us Part 2, the follow-up to Naughty Dog's excellent 2013 game, The Last of Us. A sequel that many people didn't ever think would be made and didn't ever think they needed to be made after the way that the first game ended. And I understand where they're coming from, but in 2016, we got a trailer that said, hey, The Last of Us Part 2 is coming, and all we had to do was wait for it. And we did wait. We waited a long time. We waited 4 years, 3.5 years, for the game to finally come out. All that time we waited. All the little trailers we got. All the little teases that we would get. In E3 2018, they recreated the barn that was featured in the trailer and stuffed all of us journalists in there, and we watched the trailer in there before moving on to another section of the theater. It was a very interesting decision, very interesting time, but they definitely went all out for this game. About a month and a half before it released, a rogue freelancer working with the developer, Naughty Dog, for whatever reason, there have been many thrown out there, but I don't know for sure what the reason is, decided he was going to leak all of the story elements of the game. The beats, the happenings, completely spoiling the game for anybody that ventured into those posts, which then became spoiling the game for anybody who just happened to be on the internet because people were trolling, throwing spoilers everywhere, from the Pokemon announcement I mentioned earlier. In that chat room, they were putting spoilers. They were putting spoilers in every post on Reddit and the PlayStation 4 subreddit. You couldn't get away from it unless you didn't pay attention. I was fortunate enough to be able to play the game with zero spoilers. I did not look up anything at all because I wanted to know, I wanted to find out the story of this game based on the artist's vision, let's say, the developer's vision, the studio's vision, the way they wanted me to experience this game, not the way the internet leaker wanted me to experience this game. Too many cooks in the kitchen as far as opinions go there. I wanted the artist's rendition of this game before I made my opinion. And I have to tell you, that was the smartest decision I could have made. This game is without a doubt one of the most magnificent experiences I have ever had the pleasure of playing in my 30 years of playing video games. It's really hard to describe the impact and the storytelling that this game has. The amount of attention to detail and the acting, which is weird to say for a video game. The acting was superb, but it's the truth. The acting and the way that these characters come out on the screen, everybody involved, it's just a masterpiece. And I don't use that word lightly. Masterpiece. I, admittedly, and any of my friends that you happen to meet will tell you, I am definitely the most glass half full when it comes to really anything in the world. To the point where I've been accused of being naive, but that's neither here nor there. And for me to call this game a masterpiece, as positive as I am about games and such, it really, really, really takes a lot for me to go 10 out of 10, as perfect as a game gets. Not perfect, because no game is perfect, but as perfect as a game gets. This is it. I want to do a full rundown of what makes it so good, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody, because as I just said, that was already done for me. And anyone who went that route had their opinion colored by third parties who were spoiling the game and interjecting their own opinions into it. They weren't just reading story beats. They weren't just reading like a rundown of bullet points of what happened. They were getting what happened and the leaker's opinion of it. So my main point here, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at, is that this game and the experience of this game and being around people who have spoiled it for themselves and hearing their reactions to it, I don't know that I'll ever look at spoilers again. For anything. Ever. I used to. I spoiled a couple of games for myself. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure why. I just didn't want to wait to play it all the way through. I was impatient. I had this fallacy in my head that I wanted to make sure I would like it before I actually played it, so I spoiled the ending for myself. It didn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me now, excuse me. But if I were to have spoiled this for myself and cost myself the experience of playing through this game, and seeing where Joel and Ellie and Tommy and the new characters, Dina and Jesse, and Abby and Owen and all of those people, to see where their journeys went without having any knowledge of what was coming. If I had cost myself that, I never would have forgiven myself. This is one of those games that needs to be experienced as is, with no prior knowledge, or at least the minimum amount of prior knowledge. You were never going to avoid trailers or screenshots or anything like that. And to be honest, Naughty Dog knew that. And there's at least one trailer that came out and one demo that was played by other members of the press that had straight up lies in it. Something happens in those trailers and that demo that doesn't actually happen in the game. It was changed before the final product. This developer did everything they could to ensure that their vision would be presented the way they wanted it to be presented, and then some leaker a month and a half before took it into his or her, I think it's a him, but I'm not sure, his own hands and ruined it for scores of people. Now, if you were to see their reactions on Twitter when the leaks came out, you would think this was the worst game of all time. It was your typical Twitter outrage. How could you do this to these characters? And what it makes the first game invalid and all this other nonsense that honestly just isn't true. As I told John Jansen on the radio earlier today, if someone tells you not to play this game because the story is bad and they did not experience the game for themselves, don't pay them any mind whatsoever. And I mean that. This game is too good. Far too much work went into it. And I mean that. Too much work went into it if you believe the rumors of crunch and developers being overworked, which is another topic in and of itself. I can't even get into that now. But the fruits of that labor, even if that labor was less than ideal, cannot be understated. This game is something that if you own a PlayStation 4, you owe it to yourself to pick up. I would not endorse it lightly. It's not, like I said, it's not a perfect game. There are some elements that I am not too keen on. If you don't like horror games, this is a horror game. There are plenty of things that will scare you in this game. It's not something that you should take lightly. It is, the story of the game is a pandemic, not caused by COVID. It's not a real pandemic. It's caused, if you remember the first game, by a spore from the cordyceps fungus, a real-life fungus, that mutated, started affecting humans, and turned them into mindless, zombie-esque monsters. So you have that to deal with in all shapes and sizes. There are big monsters, there are small monsters, there are monsters that if they reach you, they kill you immediately. There are monsters that you have a chance to get away from. There's a whole range. So you need to be careful and mindful that the game will spook you at certain times. There are jump scares, for lack of better terms, things that happen quickly and things that are right up in your face, especially if you're wearing headphones, like I did. I played the entire game with headphones on, right in my ears. I would recommend doing that if you can as well, because hearing things on your left and then realizing they are happening on your left is pretty damn cool. But I digress. There are some scenes, some story beats, some story moments in this game that drag on a little bit, that I might have made a little bit shorter than they were. My entire playthrough of the game is about 21 and a half hours, if I recall correctly. And I could have seen that cut by at least an hour and a half or two to the 20-hour mark. I don't know whether it would have been just less sections from where I started to where I needed to ultimately go to trigger the next cutscene, or less enemies standing in my way, or I guess more direct routes, smaller areas. I'm not exactly sure what the solution is, but there were some moments that dragged. I won't lie. But those moments are completely superseded. Those moments are completely overshadowed by the amazing story being told here. And it's something I cannot stress enough. If you own a PS4 and you're looking for something to play, read the reviews, and there are a lot of 10 out of 10s and 9 out of 10s. There are a lot of positive reviews. Don't read so much of what social media will tell you, because their views are colored, as they are with everything else. The vocal minority struck again. And make sure that you put this on your priority list. I would not endorse a game that I was not fully behind, like this at least. And you need to play this game if you have a PlayStation. If you don't, and you know someone that does, it makes for a good movie. As long as you're not watching the parts that are a little drawn out, a little strung out. As I said again to John Jansen on the radio earlier today, on Thursday. Sorry, I'm recording Thursday night. The Last of Us Part 2 is the best season of The Walking Dead I've ever watched. But with the brutality of Game of Thrones. Walking Dead is brutal on its own. Game of Thrones, I think, is slightly more insane when it comes to violence and brutality. And this game probably overshadows them both, if I'm going to be honest. There are some moments that truly made me wince. Even a moment that I knew was coming from one of the previous trailers still gave me the heebie-jeebies when it got here. I was 100% ready for it. Still. Bleh, bleh. But if you're hearing what I'm saying and you would like to discuss it further with me, my Twitter is Big Man Fanelli. You can find me there. I do not want to spoil it for those who may be interested in playing the game for themselves. I don't want to be that person. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm never going to look at spoilers again and then spoil it without giving proper warning. If I was going to do a spoiler show on this game, I would be the only thing I would talk about. It might even be a side episode if I were to do it. I'm not saying this is happening. I'm just saying how it would happen. I would not spoil it here for you. I would put a separate area to talk about spoilers. But I want you to play. I want you to experience it and then get back to me. Like I said, at Big Man Fanelli is my Twitter. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you're as high on this story as I am. And if you spoiled it for yourself and you're not going to play it because of those spoilers, tell me why. What it is about what you read that turned you off from this. And I will try, and I respectfully say this, to convince you otherwise. Because not giving this game a chance is doing yourself a huge disservice. I cannot stress that enough. To the point where, like I said earlier, I am never going to be tempted by spoilers again. Because if I had ruined this experience for myself by reading spoilers, I would never have forgiven myself for that. This is a game I wish I could play again for the first time and relive that first playthrough again. And I only finished it 22 hours ago. That's all I've thought about all day. I just can't stress enough how good this game is. But enough about that. That is the second topic for the evening. I've talked your ear off enough about it. Go play it. I promise you won't be disappointed. But for now, let's close this out with the speed run. So for part one of the speed run this evening, I want to talk about the Pokemon Presents presentation on Wednesday. And one of the big announcements that was made, was a brand new game in the Pokemon franchise developed by Tencent and Timmy, Chinese developers, called Pokemon Unite. Now, Pokemon Unite is a strategic team battle game, according to the website, being developed jointly by the Pokemon Company and Tencent Games Timmy Studios. Pokemon Unite is planned as a cross-platform for Nintendo Switch and mobile devices and will be free to start. In this game, players face off against each other in 5-on-5 team battles, during which players will cooperate with teammates to catch wild Pokemon, level up, and evolve their own Pokemon, and defeat opponents' Pokemon while trying to earn more points than the opposing team in the allotted time. Pokemon Unite introduces a new kind of Pokemon battle, one that requires teamwork and strategy. It is simple, and yet full of intricacies waiting to be unpacked. Now, if you had watched this trailer for the first time, you could have confused yourself thinking that you were watching something for League of Legends or Dota 2, as these are the most prominent MOBA or multiplayer online battle arena titles that there are at the moment. Now, this announcement came as a surprise to many people. There were many people who thought that because it was a separate event from the one held last week that had Pokemon Snap 2 and a couple other games, that this was going to be a brand new adventure. Some people were saying remakes of the Diamond and Pearl, the Generation 4 series from the DS back in mid-2000s. Others were thinking that in the vein of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, we were going to see a new Let's Go game, which would basically be another remake of Gold and Silver from the Game Boy Color back in the day. Sorry, just the Game Boy, not the Game Boy Color. No, none of those things happened. And, of course, the Pokemon fans acted in kind, and by that I mean trashed the announcement, made it downvoted it to heck on YouTube, and basically just complained that they didn't get what they thought they were getting, even though Pokemon made no indication that they were going to get that thing. But I digress. What's really exciting about this game, from an esports standpoint, is twofold. One, it brings the Pokemon fandom into a more pure competitive gaming sector. Nothing against competitive Pokemon. It's huge. Both in the game and the card game. Pokemon World Championships have been happening for years across all the different games. I do not expect that to change. But that is the pure Pokemon experience. And, unfortunately, having watched a decent amount of their programs, Pokemon competitive is not interesting to watch. There, I said it. I love Pokemon. I love playing Pokemon. I do not particularly enjoy watching competitive Pokemon played on YouTube. I don't. It's a lot of waiting for players to pick their attacks or their items or their strategies. A lot of watching the Pokemon stand around and do nothing while the commentators try and guess what's going to happen. Now, there are some plays that really impress and the commentators go crazy, but that's in every sport. It's not interesting to the naked eye. If I were to be watching it and my wife or my daughter were to be walking in, see what's going on, my wife wouldn't pay it any mind because there's nothing happening. My daughter would be like, hey, Pokemon, and then get bored. Because that's what she did when we played the game together. I love her. She loves Pokemon, but that's what she did. Watching competitive Pokemon online in its current state is not good. So, bringing Pokemon into a more established competitive gaming genre, like the 5-on-5 team-based MOBA, like League of Legends, which usually tops the viewership charts on Twitch on a daily basis, like Dota 2, which is the most lucrative esports tournament in the world, last year having a total prize pool of $38 million, this could be a huge boon for esports and competitive gaming, because if there's any franchise that could try and compete or even overtake those two titans of the competitive MOBA genre, it's Pokemon. Pokemon is the most lucrative franchise in the world. It has made more money since it has existed than anything else ever. You can look that up. It was number one for a time. I would not be surprised if it still is, considering how well Sword and Shield sold in November, plus all the expansion passes the expansion pass that is out now. Pokemon Unite, bringing Pokemon to competitive gaming, is genius, both from a esports standpoint and from a Pokemon standpoint. It's a brand new way to experience Pokemon. All the fans will give it a try. Some will stick around, some won't. And it will open the door to a brand new genre of video games. Not to mention the fact that it's free to download and start. We're not entirely sure where the money will come in, but if it's anything like other MOBA games, there may be some paying to play more or something like that. We'll get into that. If it's dirty and gross, we'll talk about that. But it's free to download and pick up and play. And it's available on Switch and cell phones, and the two environments can play against each other. So not only do you have the established user base of the Switch, which is now pushing 18 million units sold or something like that, you have all of these cell phone users as well who may give it a try just because it's a new Pokemon game. You could have 50 million players on day one. That's obviously pushing it, but it's in the realm of possibility. You have a lot more people with an iPhone or an Android phone in their pocket than they do a Switch in their house or in their backpack. So why not estimate that, say, of the 18 million Switch users, 5 million give it a shot. And of the however many cell phone users there are out there, you get 45 million people. I don't know what that percentage would be. But 50 million users on a mobile game is not all that unheard of, especially not for Pokemon. You figure Pokemon Go at one point had, 20 million, 30 million users? Maybe more? So I just think that this could be a huge thing for esports and a brand new frontier for Pokemon to pursue. Again, do I think it's going to replace the traditional Pokemon? Absolutely not. And the crowd, the hardcore Pokemon's fans' reaction to the announcement says that in droves. Whether I agree with it fully or not. But that's what they do. That's how they feel, not what they do. It's how they feel, and who am I to argue with it? But I feel like with the success of Pokemon and the success of the MOBA genre, we could be looking at the next titan of competitive gaming. I would love to be right about this. Obviously, the jury's still out. The game's not even out yet. We'll see how it evolves as it's out. But I'm definitely excited about this possibility, and I feel like more people should be too. Once you, like The Last of Us 2, wade through all the negativity, there's bound to be plenty of excited people out there that want to give this a shot. So, that is my Pokemon rant for this evening. And then for the second half of the speed run tonight, might not be all that speedy this week. While this is a gaming podcast, a gaming and esports podcast, I would be remiss if I ignored a major happening in another of my interests, and that is professional wrestling. Now, I am not talking about the speaking out movement, hashtag speaking out. While I absolutely agree that the speaking out movement is long overdue and necessary to weed out the worst of the worst in the wrestling industry, just like happened in the gaming industry as well. It's been a week for fans of both. I'm not going to talk about that here because I want to talk about something or someone that has influenced my being a wrestling fan for decades. actual decades. That person announced his retirement at the end of his 5-part documentary series, the last episode of which was added to the WWE Network over the weekend. And that is The Undertaker. The Undertaker, real name Mark Calloway, has decided that he is done with wrestling. He is riding off into the sunset, as he put it in his own words, and hanging up his boots after 30 years of entertaining fans across the world, myself included, in the wrestling ring. Now, he started before that, obviously. He went through all sorts of minor league wrestlings. He was Mean Mark Callis in WCW for a little while before signing with the WWF and debuting at Survivor Series 1990 in November of 1990 as The Undertaker. Walked out to the ring by Brother Love, played by Bruce Pritchard. And I didn't watch that match live. I was too young. I was just about 4. Wasn't quite 4 yet, but just about 4. Wasn't watching wrestling on pay-per-view yet. However, this man, about 4 years later, would be the one to cement my status as a lifelong wrestling fan. I want to take you now to January 22nd, 1994, the Royal Rumble of that year. Undertaker was wrestling Yokozuna in a casket match for his WWF title, for Yokozuna's WWF title. The casket match, for those that aren't aware, the stipulation of the match is you win by closing your opponent in a casket. You throw them in, you shut the lid, you win. It is a match type obviously tailored to The Undertaker, whose persona was an Undertaker. They called him the Dead Man. He built caskets and hung out in graveyards and cemeteries and all that stuff. He should have scared the hell out of me. And for a while he did. But just before the Royal Rumble, this match happened. Yokozuna versus The Undertaker for the WWF title. And Undertaker lost that match. He lost it after 10, maybe 11 wrestlers came out to help Yokozuna put Undertaker in that casket. And they're wheeling out the casket out through the main curtain. You can watch this on YouTube. It's still there. And all the lights go out. And on the screen you see, obviously pre-taped, The Undertaker laying in the casket, knocked out, eyes closed, head to one side. And then a lightning bolt, you hear a lightning sound, and he shoots up and he stares at the camera, still laying in this casket. And he gives a whole speech that at one point I had memorized. I don't have it memorized as much anymore. I used to. He gives a whole speech about being in the spirit of the Undertaker lives throughout the souls of all mankind, and the eternal flame of life which cannot be extinguished, the origin of which cannot be explained. And he talks about how he will be back with a vengeance. It's only a matter of time. And that's not how it ends. It ends with, I will not rest in peace. He then falls back, the head falls back to one side, you see lightning strike, and then the picture of the Undertaker rises from the screen, and then he appears above the screen with a cape on to make him look like Batman, and he flies up into the rafters, and that's the end of that. Now, obviously, as a 33-year-old man, I recognize that Mark Calloway, the Undertaker, was not the one rising to the rafters. He was still in the casket. In fact, I later found out that the one raising to the rafters, pretending to be the Undertaker, was one Marty Jannetty. That's interesting. But to a 7-year-old boy, in fact, the day before his 7th birthday, who got this pay-per-view as his birthday present. This was the coolest thing that had ever happened to him. And it not only cemented his status as a pro wrestling fan, which led to a couple bumps and bruises later on, but only my mom is wincing at that, but also a fan of Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. I followed him for the rest of his career, 26 years after that event. Every time they came to Philly, if I could be there, I would go. Even knowing that he wouldn't show up in his later years, I still hoped for him. I watched all of his matches. I've followed his career to the extent that somebody can. And honestly, I'm happy that he got to go out his way. Obviously, it wasn't the way that he envisioned it, because nobody envisioned coronavirus. Nobody envisioned the pandemic. But that Boneyard match at WrestleMania 36, the pre-taped WrestleMania match with AJ Styles, was a very, very cool way for him to go, to be done. And I would be fine with never seeing him in a wrestling ring again. The man is pushing 60. He's not quite 60, but he's pushing 60. He's had both of his hips replaced. He has more than earned. Sorry, he's 55. Not quite pushing 60. He's almost there. He has more than earned a full retirement after the career that he had, that started in 1987, the year I was born, and eventually he came to the WWE in 1990, and the rest was history. He was a constant in my life. Every Monday night, or every Friday night or Thursday night when he moved to SmackDown back during the brand splits, I know I would see my favorite wrestler on TV without fail. There were times where he was injured. There were times where he wasn't on for an extended period of time. There was the times where he changed his gimmick from the dead mortician to the biker guy, and he went through his ups and downs. But I always enjoyed watching him wrestle. I always was enthralled by his entrance, and I will never forget multiple moments in his career, from the one I just described in 1994 to King of the Ring 1998, one of the most iconic matches ever that put Mick Foley, Mankind at the time, on a pedestal that he would never have to come down from. I watched him win the WWE Championship 4 times and the World Heavyweight Championship 3 times. Honestly, 7-time world champion is not enough when John Cena has 16, but that's my opinion. He was a stalwart in the Attitude Era, the biggest, the most successful time in wrestling, with his Ministry of Darkness and Lord of Darkness gimmick. Completely hokey, if I'm being honest, but enthralling all the same. And I just could not get enough of him. And now, to have watched the documentary, I binged the whole thing on Monday, and to know that most likely, unless, as he says in the documentary, in case of emergency, break glass, take out the Undertaker, that if he has his way, he's going to get to retire in Texas, just outside of Austin, with his wife, the former wrestler Michelle McCool, and his kids, and just live out the rest of his days as Mark Calloway and not The Undertaker. I should be sad. I should be upset. I should be melancholy that this man is done, that a hero, a pillar of my life, which is weird to say, but, when you watch a guy every Monday night on TV, and he's your favorite wrestler, and he's the reason you watch wrestling, he becomes a big part of your life, your pop culture life, let's say. And to see him now ride off into the sunset, the only thing I can feel is gratitude, happiness. Gratitude that this man gave me 33 years of his life in a business that he loved and he cared for more than anything else. And that I was able to share his talent with him for the entirety of that career, except for, in the early parts, but I can go back and watch those whenever I want. Mr. Calloway, I don't know that you'll ever listen to this. I highly doubt it, because I imagine video games and esports are not your thing. But if somehow this clip makes its way to you, I just want to say thank you for the memories. Thank you for your professionalism. Thank you for always being a team player and not defecting to the other side like so many other people did. Thank you for the matches. Thank you for the promos. Thank you for the laughs. Thank you for the not the tears, the fears, because there were times where you legitimately scared me, especially as a young boy, as a young, unknowing Hulk Hogan fan, before I became an Undertaker fan. And I hope you enjoy every second of never having to get into the ring again. And I really hope that they don't break the glass. I truly do. So with that, that is the end of episode 3 of Cheesesteaks and Controllers. Weird to end on a non-gaming note, but I had to talk about it, and this is the only platform I really have. So thank you for obliging me if you're listening to this. Thank you, as always, if you are listening to this part of the podcast, to the end of the podcast. Thank you for your support and your ears and your time and your understanding or willingness to understand. I am here to educate just as much as I am to entertain. This has been episode 3 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast for Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM Philadelphia. I am Esports Insider Jason Fanelli. You can find me on Twitter at Big Man Fanelli. Thank you as always. We'll see you next week. Good night.